We'd like to start today by acknowledging that we're on the unceded sovereign lands of the Gadigal people and pay our respects to elders past and present. This always was and always will be Aboriginal land.
Welcome to So You're Disabled.
This episode is brought to you by Spoonie, the world's first social network for neurodivergent, chronically ill and disabled people. And hey, I'm Soph, I'm disabled, and my pronouns are she, they.
I'm Tam, I'm living with a disability, and my pronouns are she, her. Well, everyone, today we're going to be talking about friendship and disability.
Yes, and, obviously we're blessed because we've been friends for over 20 years now.
Oh, I do feel very blessed.
Me too. But, outside of our friendship, I have had a really hard time, well, we both have, in maintaining friendships and meeting new people and having friendships. Especially, I think today I'm going to touch a lot on my neurodivergence and how that can really impact my ability to make and maintain friendships.
Yeah, I think that living with any form of disability or chronic illness or neurodivergence or anything like that gives lots of different layers to friendship, and I found has exposed me to a lot of extra pain because of people misunderstanding and just the difficulty in maintaining friendships when you're so unwell, particularly as we've touched on in previous episodes, but needing to cancel last minute. I feel that sometimes my friends have just really not understood that, and unfortunately it's meant that I've lost friendships because of it.
Yeah, and I, as well, the experience of people judging me, even if they don't know my diagnosis, but judging me based on how I am because of my disabilities. And, one of the things I think that I hate the most, and I don't think I'm the best at, is small talk, frankly. I'm really not good at it. But when you're meeting a new person, often the only thing there is small talk. And internally, if you ever see me in a conversation where it's small talk, internally I'm screaming every time. I'm like, oh my God, what do I say? What am I supposed to say? Am I saying enough? Am I nodding enough? Oh, they're talking. What are they talking about? I've tuned out. What are they talking about? Just nod and smile, Sophie. Just nod and smile. And then there's this silence, and I'm like, I meant to ask something. What do I ask? What's appropriate? What do I think their interests are? What were they just saying? And then there's like this awkward extended silence, and
then people just ask about the weather because that's typical small talk, right?
Yeah, or just walk off. So that's fun. So yeah, even that like initially trying to make friends part is really hard. I do much better when there's a conversation about a topic of one of my special interests or something we can talk in depth about. Like, I know you're not meant to talk about politics, but truly it is one of the easiest conversation starters for me because there's so much to say.
I mean, who says you can't talk about politics? It really does break
society.
Well, I mean, as we're doing here, like, we need to challenge these perceptions about society. Like, just because society says it's like what you're meant to do doesn't mean we should be doing it.
Yeah, I agree. So yeah, well, I mean, a lot of social norms are not great when you have a disability or you're living with a disability, frankly.
Absolutely. Even just in terms of, like I said before, cancelling last minute or not being able to spend as much time or be present to all the things that our friends need us to be because of our disability, and then losing friendships because of that. And so this is hard for me to say, but so one of the most painful experiences I have in that is having lost a friend that was quite special to me. So her and I were really close. We used to call each other sorelle, which means sisters in Italian. and she actually moved overseas. So when she moved, we sort of drifted a little bit, but we still like maintained contact. And it was a sort of friendship where her family knew my family and would sometimes spend time together, sort of thing. Anyways, when she was overseas, she got engaged, which was so exciting. And she came back here to have a sort of traditional ceremony. And she invited me, and I was so excited to go. But the ceremony was actually an hour and a half away from my house. And it started at 7:30 in the morning. So if you know me, you know that I'm not a morning person. So it would have been like impossible for me to get there, like in the morning from my house.
But
So
you would have done it because when people are important to you, you show up, even if it's 7:30 in the morning and you have to get up at 6 in the morning or 5 a.m. or something, you would have done it if you could have.
thank you, Soph. Well, I had actually organised to stay at my friend's house because luckily my friend at the time was living just 15 minutes from that venue that I had to go to. So I had organised to stay at his house the night before. But unfortunately, so I'd organised, sorry, let's start again. So I'd organised to stay at his house the night before. So I was committed and ready and so excited to go. I had bought her present. I was just really looking forward to it. But unfortunately, the morning that I had to commute to my friend's house, I just really unexpectedly fell very unwell. And I was still determined. I was like, no, I'm going to really try. So I was like, Mum, can we please go for a test drive and let's see if I'm just well enough to commute to my friend's place? Because if I can just do that, I might magically sort of wake up tomorrow and be okay. So we did. We went for this test drive, and within 5 minutes, I had to say, please stop the car. Like, I'm too unwell. Let's go back home. So I got home, and like I said, this was the morning. So I contacted her straight away, but I couldn't get hold of her over the phone. So I had to text her, which I don't like because lack of tone and so many reasons I don't like texting, but I did. And because I wanted her to know straight away. But I didn't hear back from her for the rest of the day, which I thought was a bit odd, and I was really anxious, to be honest. But I didn't want to disturb her either. Anyways, then at night time, her mum messaged me, and her mum messaged me and told me that it was really awful of me to have cancelled last minute and that I took a spot from someone else that actually would have wanted to be at that wedding. And I just, like, this was over Messenger, and I was just like, what? Like, I was so shocked at first. And then I responded, and I was like, no, what do you mean? I'm absolutely not doing this on purpose. Of course I really want to be there. I'm just genuinely so unwell right now. I'm just in my bed. And instead of responding to me, she literally blocked me on everything. And then my friend blocked me on everything. And I just never heard back from them again. Literally, till this day, I didn't hear from them again. Like, I still haven't. And they still had my dad on Facebook, though. So they knew that not long after this incident, just like a few months after this had happened, my dad passed away. And they knew how close I was with my dad and how close, like, my family are in general, being, like, Southern Italian. And they didn't contact me then either. And literally, like I said, till this day, I haven't heard from them. And it's still really painful right now, like even now, to be honest.
That's so fair.
I remember being in so much grief when this happened, and I just think this is something that isn't spoken about enough, is friendship loss and the grief we go through with that and how heartbreaking it really is. Like, I remember waking up multiple times throughout the night and just really grieving this, and maybe this is because of who I am as a person. I tend to blame myself, but that's what I was doing for a really long time, was just placing all of this blame on me and thinking it was all just my fault. But then, as I sort of like processed all of this and spoke about it with people, I realised that actually, even when we were younger in our friendships, because I did have to cancel last minute because I was unwell, she would just always call me flaky. And that used to make me feel really, quite frankly, bad and really down about myself. And I sort of decided to reframe like my thoughts and how I was feeling, to realize that actually that's not the sort of friend that I would want. Like, that's not the energy I want to invite into my life. Like, if my friends think I'm flaky because I have to cancel last minute, they're just not the right friends for me at this point in my life anymore. And I think that that speaks to the fact that lately I've found that I just connect a lot better with friends who also have some sort of health issue, because they just get it. And I just feel comfortable just being like, hey, today's just not that great of a day.
Yeah, I think it's so important to be able to do that and have people that really understand you and where you're coming from and those lived experiences of disability, because that's just so terrible. And, I remember this period of time actually, and I still feel the same amount of shock rehearing the story as I did living it with you when this all happened. And it still breaks my heart because I know how hurtful that was for you, and understandably so, because you're an amazing person and friend.
Thank you.
And
So are you.
thank you. But it's this misunderstanding in society about what it means when someone cancels last minute with no nuance. That's really what it, I think comes down to, that you cancelled last minute so you don't care. But you would have done anything at all possible to be there if you could.
And I literally said, as soon as I am better, like it could be tomorrow, it could be the next day, I'm not sure. Let's please meet up and let's celebrate. Like, I want to do everything possible to really celebrate your ceremony. And it wasn't even like the official wedding, it was a ceremony. I was planning, as long as I was in good health, to be at the official wedding. So I just don't understand why you just completely ghost someone without sort of thinking, oh, well, maybe they really are that unwell that they can't come.
But that is a fundamental issue with her and not you, because she's not doing that. That's a basic friend thing to do.
Yeah, I think sometimes it's really hard because, kind of like dating in a way, it's so easy to theoretically know these things, but when feelings and emotions are involved, it's really much harder.
Absolutely. And, I can think of so many examples myself of times where, especially as a neurodivergent person, I've been really misunderstood. And each example I have is really painful, deeply painful to me, because I think one of my biggest fears in life is probably to be misunderstood. And I think that I also try to live as authentically as possible in my life. And so when people misunderstand me, it's always been a really difficult thing for me to grapple with. And I always think about, I could have done this, I could have done that, I could have said that, or, and then it would have changed that narrative. And that's still something I think about with some of these examples I'm thinking of. I've had really close friends whose parents and families have accused me of being a liar. I can't lie, to save myself, really.
You really can't. I can vouch for that. And you are the most trustworthy and honest person I know.
Yeah, and who hate me, who think I'm really rude.
I can't imagine anyone hating you. You're just so lovely.
Thank you. But it's because of things they'd say, well, it's just polite, normal behavior that you would walk into someone's home and you would find them and say hello and make small talk. I already said, I'm not good at small talk. I'm especially not good at small talk with people I already know hate me. If you hate me and I know that, what are we doing? We're just pretending, aren't we? Why are we doing that? I mean, to be honest, as an autistic person, I'm thinking to myself, let's just cut the crap, shall we? You hate me. that hurts me. Let's not bother.
It's so
I'm
fake and awkward as well.
yeah, and I'm not saying like I wouldn't say hello to someone in their own home. Like, of course not. But I was raised by ethnic parents, but like it's it's still the small talk aspect is really hard for me, especially when I know that someone doesn't like me. And yeah, so I've got that experience. I've got experiences of people being like, you're so weird, or you take things too seriously, or, things like that. So, yeah, it's just really hard each time and really painful. And it becomes so isolating. Like, I've had times in my life where I've had very few friends.
Yeah, I think that this is a really good point, particularly for the disabled community, is all the social isolation that we face all the time because I speak for myself, I'm at home a lot, which means that inherently I'm quite socially isolated. And also just not being able to go and do things that other people sort of are able to. And I think that's almost one of the hardest things for me is all of the missing out parts that come with living with a disability. And on your point of having gone through a period where you didn't have very many friends, honestly, me too. There was actually a bit of a period in time where Soph and I weren't talking, and this was post a breakup that I had, and I was just not connected with anyone, and I just felt so isolated because I was at home all the time and I didn't have anyone, like any of my friends, coming over to spend time with me or checking up on me, and I just remember how lonely I felt. But even sort of in times where I have had friendships, I think there are just so many different layers to those interactions when you are unwell, because it's meant that I have missed out on going to a lot of events with them. So either they just they've stopped inviting me altogether, or I've missed out. So when I then am able to go, I've felt a bit left out, to be honest, because like they sort of speak about all these personal jokes and all of these memories that I just wasn't a part of. And then I just feel quite anxious.
Yeah, I definitely relate to that experience as well. I think also for me it's really hard to have the spoons to respond to everyone, and this is something I'm still struggling with. A lot of people understandably want to text because we're all busy and have our own life stuff going on, and it's much easier to send a quick text. But I, first of all, have a nonverbal learning disability, so it's, if I've already read stuff that day, even reading text messages is just too much reading for me sometimes. And also my brain is tired and I just need a bit of a break. And it's not that I don't care about my friends. I do, genuinely. Like, I cannot talk to someone for a year and they reach out to me and I'm like, oh my God, how have you been? Like, so great to hear from you, all that sort of stuff. So, yeah, it's not that I'm not thinking about them. It's just, I just don't have it in me all the time to respond to everyone. And then, like, I also am trying to look after myself and take breaks away from my phone and screens. And, it's just really hard to find the balance in this very technological world.
It is so hard to find the balance, particularly when I feel I struggle, like you, to find the energy to just do basic need stuff that you need to do in life sometimes. And then it's like, well, I'll see a message pop up and I'll be like, okay, I'll respond to this, in a couple hours or tomorrow. But then that turns into days or weeks or potentially months, and it gets to the point where it's just so awkward. It's like, okay, what do I do now? Do I respond or do I just kind of leave it?
Yeah. This is why I try to be really understanding with all of my friends who are like this as well. And, there's a really good understanding, I think, among many of my friends now that, like, there's no pressure to reply to me. anytime soon. It's okay if you take months. Like, I don't care. Like, I get it. And we're all just doing our best, really. And, you know, I have friends that we've been friends for years. We went to high school together, and I don't hear from them for like a year or more. And then they message me and they're like, so sorry. I'm feeling better now. Like, can we catch up? Fine, no worries. Like, it happens. I get it. Because I would never want to respond to someone the way I've been responded to and the way you've been responded to.
I love that. So if you're almost like challenging this sort of like accessible friendship, like conversation type of thing going on. I really like that.
I think you've got to live the way you want other people to be, right? Like if you want to see that in the world, why not start with you?
I love that. I totally agree with that. And this is something lately that not lately, but for a while now that I've really been trying to challenge as well, is making sure I'm sort of doing enough research to really factor in when I'm like organizing something with friends that it's an accessible space that we're going to, because I feel that accessibility means something different for everyone, for every different types of disabilities. But even within those disabilities, it varies, like the accessibility. And I think, you know, just like if people take it to heart that you haven't been able to respond to them for a long time and that can make you feel really bad, it can also make you feel very unwelcome and very not accepted when you're invited to a place and it's just not accessible.
Absolutely. I think access needs are a big conversation. Well, they're an important conversation. I think they should be a more normal conversation that we're having more regularly with people. Because, yeah, my access needs change depending on the day, the time, what's happening in my life, like all of that sort of stuff. So, you know, one of my favorite things is you and I have a like favorite dinner place. It's quiet, you know, it's not necessarily the best service, but that's okay. They mainly leave us to ourselves. There's a time limit on how long we can have the table for, but that's all right. Because we get to sit there, talk about whatever we want to talk about. It's good food and it's, you know, quiet, dim lighting, that sort of stuff. Like, it is the best place when I'm feeling exhausted for us to go. And I know what it's going to be like because we go there regularly enough. And I know what to expect. And they don't change the menu. There's no surprises. Oh, as I say that, I'm like, one of the things I probably hate most in the world is places that have sample menus.
Oh my God, I know. I like the consistency.
Just tell me what I can order.
I know.
I'm going to order ahead of time. I'm going to know. And if you don't tell me what's going to be available that day, I'm not coming. I'm not coming.
Absolutely.
Except with my partner, who apparently loves these types of places. And although I think he's probably reduced the amount of times that he's inviting me along to places like this, because we went to one about a year ago when we were overseas visiting my family, and it was the weirdest place I've ever been to. There was no menu ahead of time. You just had to tell them your dietary requirements. Excuse me, what's a dietary requirement? Like, I'm autistic. Are you going to know what that means? No. So, like, just tell me what's on the menu. And it was like foams. There was some like cured bison. It was
What even
there was
is
like
that?
a leaf sauce.
A leaf sauce?
Yeah, look,
What is a leaf sauce?
Well, it was like vines or something. It was like leaves. It was green.
Oh my God, this is why sample menus should just be like banned.
There was like raw fish. I don't like fish. Okay, certainly not raw.
Oh God.
Texturally terrible. Then about halfway through, this carbonara dish comes out. I'm like, thank God, something normal, like something resembling a food I like. You know, I love carbonara. the noodles for the carbonara was actually squid.
Oh my God. No.
Yeah. Yeah. So,
No, that should be banned.
but I was like, this is still a relief compared to like whatever else has been going on for the last however long we've been here. They also just like kept bringing out food. My partner's having to eat like double the food because I'm like, nope, that's weird. Nope, that's a texture I don't like. Nope, that's fish. And, you know, when we were doing dietary requirements, we were like, no, like, blah, blah, blah. You know, no, I think it was like strawberries, because he doesn't like strawberries. No strawberries, something and something, because we couldn't think off the top of our head, like, what else, you know, you would put in dietary requirements. And yeah, not a great experience. Anyway, a long-winded way of saying absolutely consider your audience and their access needs. I'm not saying my partner didn't. I definitely, like, I went along because I was like, you'll love this. It was my nice thing I did for him. And he definitely does consider my access needs, but all the time. But yeah, I think in terms of maintaining friendships, it is something that's really important. And it is really hard if someone doesn't bring up that conversation to then be like, actually, like if we went to this place, that would be better for me. And having to explain that as well. I can't tell you, it's just the vibe.
It's also just really awkward, I think, when this hasn't been considered. And so you go somewhere and actually you realize you can't be there because of your access needs.
Mm-hmm.
So I remember, I mean, making friends is not easy, like it's hard. And I was really excited because I had like just met these people and I was like younger and we actually went out and we were in this venue and all of a sudden these really bright flashing lights just came up and they just kept going. And I just instantly, it was triggering a flare up. So I had to leave. And it was just so awkward to be like, oh, like, hey, everyone, like, do you mind if we leave? And of course, they didn't want to go because they were having so much fun. And so I had to be like, oh, okay, like, no problem. I'm really sorry, though. Like, I can't be here. So I'm just going to get going now. And it was like the first time we had gone out together. And it was just so awkward. They were just sort of looking at me like, what do you mean? And I was like, oh, those lights are kind of hurting my eyes a bit, so I'm just going to get going. And they were like, oh, okay. And I was like, bye. Hopefully see you again.
Oh gosh, that's really crappy that they didn't, you know, leave with you.
I mean, it is quite, like, yeah, it's not the best. But what I mean is, like, that's just sort of an example that I have of why I really think it's so important to consider access needs in general.
Yeah. And I mean, even if people don't have a conversation about, like, oh, what are your access needs if we are going out? You know, it doesn't need to even be that explicit. But even saying, like, hey, I'm thinking of going to this place, and then being able to research it ahead of time and be like, oh, actually, like, I'm not
Exactly.
going to be able to. Because, you know, sometimes we're not telling people about our disabilities, and that's okay. And so they can't, like, accommodate for that if they don't know. But just, like, telling people, hey, I'm thinking of going here. Do you want to go here? Ahead of time so you can decide.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's why it's so important for venues and places to have a lot of transparency around what their venue looks like and if there are lots of stairs and if there are going to be like probing lights going on.
Oh my God, you've just like touched on something that I could rant about for ages. Why, as people with disabilities or disabled people, do we need to take it upon ourselves to contact a venue about their accessibility?
Oh, it's just...
And they've got the accessibility email or the accessibility phone number. And sometimes it's only a phone number. People don't like making phone calls, especially to randoms. I don't want to do that.
No, nor do I. And again, really, it just needs to be a much more accessible way to access, like, transparency around the accessibility in certain venues.
Absolutely.
And it makes it easier for us then to know ahead of time, okay, yes, we can go. So yes, we will be able to be very present in this, interaction with our friends and hopefully make some friends, because it is already, as we've said, so difficult for us. Don't make it even harder. Like, make it easy for us to just feel safe that we know that we can be there and we're getting all of our access needs met.
Absolutely. I think something that has really occurred to me while we've been talking is no wonder it takes so many spoons to catch up with a friend, especially when they're not kind of in the know about the disability community and access needs and things like that. It takes so much planning. Tell me where you think you're going. I need to research it. What's this going to be like? Blah, blah, blah. No wonder you and I go to the same restaurant like on the regular, because that's exhausting. Like, that's so much work. But, it's like, yeah, it's a lot. So I hope this has been validating for all of you, because it's really made me realize, like, no wonder I'm so exhausted.
And no wonder it makes it so much harder for us to make friends. And honestly, all that it's doing is just making the social isolation that we have to experience even, and it's making, like, and it's even exacerbating our sense of social isolation, because we're not being put in a position to go somewhere and just feel comfortable that we'll be okay there.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think also having sensory safe spaces and things like that for venues would also be a really good add for them to do something easy that makes their venues more accessible.
Absolutely. But this sounds like it's a whole episode on its own of ways in which venues and all sorts of places can be more accessible.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Stay tuned for that one. But I think that's our time for today. We could keep going about this for ages, but I hope this has been validating, and thank you for joining us for this episode, and we'll see you again in 2 weeks.
Bye, everyone. Take care of yourselves.
Bye.
Bye.